I was sorting the week's mail when I saw the envelope from Bellamy Gardens, the kind of place that made glossy magazines sigh in italics. I didn't remember giving them my address, but the letterhead gleamed in the morning light that slipped across my apartment floor. I slid a finger under the flap and unfolded a contract so neat it almost purred. The coffee cup froze halfway to my lips as my eyes hit the bottom line. There was my name in ink that pretended to be me, a looping, elegant signature, authorizing payments that added up to $76,000 for my sister Destiny's wedding. Except it wasn't my signature. The loops leaned too round. The slant strutted at a steeper angle. It was a convincing disguise, but I would have known the truth even in the dark. The curls at the ends of the letters were Destiny's, the dotted I's placed just right of center, the way she'd always done on school permission slips when she wanted our mother to think she'd asked. The room tilted, my hand went numb, and the cup slipped. Ceramic shattered against the hardwood. Coffee sloshed over my bare feet, and I didn't flinch. I dialed the number printed beneath the letterhead with fingers that barely felt attached. "Bellamy Gardens, how may I help you?" A cheerful voice chimed. "This is Andy Collins," I said, surprised by how high my voice sounded. "I'm calling about a wedding contract for Destiny Collins." A soft gasp of admiration floated through the line. "Oh, Miss Collins, we're thrilled about your sister's special day. Everyone here keeps talking about your generous gift. It's beautiful when family shows up like this." The first tear fell hot and uninvited. "Thank you," I murmured, and hung up before my throat collapsed. The past crept in like a draft under a door. 16-year-old me pulling double shifts at the ice cream shop while Destiny practiced a summer tan at the community pool. My graduation money borrowed for her spring break trip to Cancun. Dad's startup that just needed a little boost. Mom's clear voice telling me I was the responsible one, as though it were an honor bestowed by a crown rather than a life term. Destiny is just finding herself, she'd say, like I was a map she could draw on with permanent marker. 2 months ago at Sunday dinner, Destiny flashed a ring the size of a chandelier crystal while Dad refilled his wine. "Since you've got that promotion coming," he said, as if my paycheck had a seat at the table, "you could help give your sister the wedding she deserves." The room waited for my good girl nod. My hands shook under the table as I said, "I can't afford that. I'm still paying my student loans." Silence gathered like storm clouds. Mom sighed in disappointment. Dad's brow furrowed into a lecture. Destiny's pout bloomed. "Family takes care of family. That's how we raised you. Don't you want your sister to be happy? After everything you've accomplished, surely you can manage this one thing?" Destiny chimed in. "And that promotion will help." I saw myself for what I'd become to them, an ATM with a pulse. That night, sleep wouldn't come. At 3:00 a.m., the laptop's glow turned my apartment into an interrogation room. I typed wedding into my email search bar and found an old thread with a subject line that made my stomach knot Andy's contribution. Mom had written, "She'll give in, eventually she always does. Remember when she swore she wouldn't pay for Destiny's car repairs 1 week?" Destiny had replied, "If not, we'll figure something out. She's got the credit for it." A tide of nausea rolled in heavy and slow. It wasn't just pressure, it was a plan. I opened a spreadsheet and titled it, "Family Loans." The rows filled like a time-lapse of erosion. The Cancun spring break, the car repairs, Dad's venture, little Christmas charges that became big January statements. I paired each memory with receipts and bank statements, added dates, added notes, added years. The total at the bottom stared back without blinking, a ledger of cheerful betrayals. $42,387 poured into the black hole of their wants. I rubbed my burning eyes and refused to cry. When my phone pinged at 9:00 a.m., Destiny had texted a photo from a plush bridal suite champagne raised. She wanted to upgrade the flowers only a few dollars per guest, and wasn't the bridal suite heaven. 10 minutes later, Mom called to ask if I'd seen the message and could approve the flowers. "I'm not paying for flowers?" I said, and my steady tone shocked us both. Her sigh came rehearsed. "This attitude isn't like you, Andy. The Hendersons already commented on how generous you're being. Everyone's talking about it." I stared at the forged contract. I never agreed to pay for anything. Her voice slid lower smooth as a blade. "Family supports family. I just hope you're not becoming one of those selfish career women who forget where they came from." After we hung up, I checked my credit report and felt my mouth go dry. A hard inquiry from Bellamy Gardens. A new line of credit in my name. It wasn't just a forged signature, it was theft in motion. The screen pulsed with a second notification: "This one gentler interior design position, Charleston office, interested in your portfolio." Eleanor from work had mentioned it in passing, 3 states away and a clean horizon. For the first time that day, something inside me lifted like a kite. I called my friend James, the only person who knew the whole history. "They forged my name for $76,000, I said. He didn't hesitate. "That's not normal. That's criminal." "Andy, this doesn't end because you keep paying. It ends because you stop." I sat very still, holding the phone like it could anchor me. I looked at the cracked circle of coffee drying around the broken mug on my floor. Somewhere between the ledger on my screen and the quiet of my apartment, a small hinge turned. I could hear it a click that sounded like the beginning of a door opening. I opened a blank document and began outlining what I would need: proof of refusal, proof of forgery, proof of pattern. I typed the word evidence and felt my pulse calm for the first time since morning. When the sun finally edged over the buildings and into my kitchen, I set the glued-together mug on the counter and watched light fill its hairline cracks. Some things once broken reveal their seams. Mine did not make me weaker. They showed me where to reinforce. Sunday dinner arrived like a carefully laid trap. The moment I shrugged off my coat, Aunt Mabel folded me into a hug, her voice quivering with admiration. "You sweet, generous girl," she said, patting my cheek. "Funding Destiny's entire wedding, your mother says you insisted." My stomach twisted as Mom swooped in, looping her arm through mine and steering me toward the living room where relatives and neighbors buzzed with warm smiles. "Come tell the Hendersons how you chose Bellamy Gardens," she urged. Dad's booming voice filled the room, boasting to his golf friends that I'd insisted Destiny deserved nothing but the best. Destiny floated between groups like a starlit pale pink dress, catching the light, basking in the applause of my invisible generosity. Then she bounced over, cradling an elaborate floral arrangement. Crystal teardrops hung from roses dusted in silver. Sample centerpiece, she beamed. "We need 30. I told them you said the sky's the limit." My throat closed. 30 tables, Mom appeared at her side with her leather planner. 300 guests feels right for our family, she said firmly. Destiny added, "The planner still needs your card for the ice sculpture deposit." My vision narrowed to a tunnel. I muttered something about air and fled to the porch, the laughter and chatter muffled behind the glass door. By Monday lunch, my escape plan was unfolding in secret. I sat in my car with my laptop open to a video call. Gregory Winters, creative director of Charleston Home and Design, studied my portfolio. "Most designers your age overdo it," he said thoughtfully. "But your spaces breathe." My voice came out steady. "I believe in creating rooms people actually want to live in." When he asked my salary expectation, I didn't flinch. "Based on experience and market, $82,000 annually plus benefits." He nodded, impressed. "That's precisely the range." We ended the call with his promise to be in touch. I closed the laptop and sat in stunned silence, realizing my hands weren't shaking. For the first time in years, I had asked for my worth without apology. The week became an exercise in quiet rebellion. I blocked time on my calendar for personal business and spent nights sorting receipts, printing emails, and recording phone calls. At Saturday brunch, my family unveiled their latest ambush. The doorbell rang, and in swept Marissa Williams' wedding planner extraordinaire, balancing 3 bulging portfolios. "Andy at last," she exclaimed, sliding invoices across the table. Each page carried charges so extravagant they bordered on parody $10,000 for theatrical lighting, exotic orchids imported from overseas monogram napkins for 300 guests. Each page bore one damning notation: A. Collins approval required. My jaw tightened. "Could I see all the contracts, please?" I asked evenly. Destiny paled. "Andy loves dramatic lighting." "Right, Andy." Mom cut in with false cheer, urging Marissa to try her cinnamon rolls. While they busied themselves in the kitchen, I quietly snapped photos of every invoice. That night, James spread legal printouts across my coffee table. "In this state," he said, pointing to a clause, "if you prove identity theft, you can break a lease penalty-free. They forged your name, you have the evidence." Eleanor texted links to affordable Charleston apartments. I clicked through a virtual tour of a small 1-bedroom with a balcony. The rent was manageable. The distance from my family was priceless. The official offer landed Tuesday morning, $82,000 with relocation assistance start date in 3 weeks. I accepted from my car parked in a quiet lot, my voice steady and firm. That night, I signed the lease for the Charleston apartment, aligning my move-in with the start date. 2 more weeks, I whispered to my reflection. The next days blurred with logistics. I called movers, gathered evidence, and documented every manipulative voicemail. Mom's sighs, Dad's booming authority, Destiny's entitled demands all preserved no longer fuel for guilt, but ammunition for protection. I recorded her shrill message about the florist and her text threatening never to forgive me. I saved Dad's warning about responsibilities and Mom's Facebook post lamenting children who forget where they come from. Slowly, their narrative cracked. Friends and cousins commented under the post, questioning the story, noting rumors of costs spiraling out of control. For the first time, the lies weren't airtight. The mask was slipping. Moving day dawned bright. From my window, I watched my parents' SUV pull away for a cake tasting. 10 minutes later, the truck rolled up. "We'll start with the labeled boxes," I told the movers, surprised at how firm my voice sounded. My landlord, after reviewing the evidence, agreed to waive all penalties. As my carefully curated furniture was wrapped and carried out, I sat cross-legged on the floor, laptop balanced on my knees, transferring accounts, closing credit lines, changing passwords. My phone vibrated non-stop with missed calls and voicemails from Destiny and Mom, each one dripping with panic and fury. I recorded them all. When the last box was loaded, I took a long look at the apartment that had been both a cage and a shelter. On the counter sat the cracked mug, glued but still bearing its scars. I left it behind with a note. Some things, once broken, can never be the same. By the end of that day, James texted to say my bookshelf and desk were safe. In his spare room, Eleanor had arranged my new workspace in Charleston, and even an old college friend had offered me her guest room for the transition week. I wasn't alone. That evening, an urgent email arrived from Bellamy Gardens, $22,000 due in 3 days, or the reservation would be canceled. Attached were messages from vendors and the groom's parents expressing concern. Their empire of deceit was crumbling faster than I dared hope. I poured myself a glass of wine, stepped onto the balcony, and let the Charleston horizon take shape in my imagination. Freedom had a taste, sharp, clean, and undeniable. And it was mine. 4 days after the movers rolled away, my new Charleston apartment already felt more like home than any place I had lived before. The afternoon light slid across bare hardwood floors, and though boxes still crowded corners, the air felt light, breathable. My phone, however, was relentless. 23 messages in the first hour after my mother discovered my empty apartment. 37 more by nightfall. I let them all vibrate into silence, each one proof of their unraveling. Mom's texts accused me of betrayal. Dad's voicemails thundered about responsibility. Destiny's threats veered between desperation and venom. I saved them all. When Aunt Meredith's voice crackled through my voicemail, pleading for me to come to my senses, I felt no pang of guilt, only a weary recognition. They had enlisted relatives as reinforcements, the same tactic they'd always used. But this time, I was out of reach. The calendar on my new kitchen wall displayed the wedding date circled in red, 1 week away. I stared at it and thought, let it come. Against better judgment, I answered one of Destiny's calls late that night. Her voice was raw from crying. "You selfish, ungrateful witch," she hissed. "After everything we've done for you." I let the words hang. "Everything you've done for me," I repeated calm and sharp. "Pay for the wedding, or you're dead to me. Simple as that. That's your choice to make," I said and ended the call before her silence could twist into another demand. I turned back to my laptop. The folder labeled Evidence was thick with files, the forged contract beside samples of my real signature. The handwriting analysis, Eleanor's friend had helped me secure the audio clip of Destiny, telling her maid of honor. She had signed Andy's name as a favor to push things along. I reviewed the formal letter to Bellamy Gardens one last time, then pressed send. Within the hour, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. The venue manager's voice was polite but strained. "Miss Collins, we've received your email. This situation is highly unusual. We'll need to speak with your sister and parents immediately." My reply was steady. "I've already notified my lawyer and the credit bureaus. The contract was signed without my consent." Then I drafted one final message, this one to my extended family. No accusations, no emotional barbs, just facts. I attached screenshots of texts where I'd refused to pay, bank statements showing unexplained charges, and the venue's confirmation that the signature didn't match my identification. I hit send and closed my laptop. The ripple began almost immediately. My cousin Thomas called, bewildered. "The venue just called Uncle Jim demanding immediate payment, or they'll cancel everything." "What's going on?" "Ask Destiny," I said softly, "or her fiancé's parents." Soon, family group chats buzzed with confusion. Guests received postponement notices. Mom and Dad frantically called relatives seeking emergency loans. Destiny was spotted in tears at the florist, canceling the exotic orchids. The groom's father demanded a prenuptial agreement. The empire of performance they'd built was crumbling in real time. That night, I poured wine and stepped onto my balcony. The Charleston air was warm and forgiving, nothing like the suffocating weight of my old city. My phone finally stilled, and for the first time in months, I wasn't waiting for the next blow to fall. The following morning, I called Destiny, and she answered instantly. "Come to apologize," she sneered. "No," I said simply. "I forgive you, but I won't forget." Her laugh was bitter. "You've ruined everything." "I've started over," I corrected. "Charleston is beautiful. My firm values my work. My apartment gets morning sun. I'm building a life I don't need to escape from." Her voice cracked into a whisper. "We're your family. The wedding bill is the consequence of your choices, not mine. Maybe it's time you learned what that feels like." I ended the call before she could reply. James reported that my parents had spent yesterday begging banks for emergency loans. Destiny had slashed her bridesmaids in half and canceled the ice sculpture and fireworks. Even her designer gown was gone. The wedding was shrinking reality closing in. That evening, Mom's final voicemail arrived. "Andy," she began, voice faltering. "We never meant for it to go this far." I listened to the end, then deleted it. Outside my window, the sun dipped over the Charleston rooftops, coloring the horizon in shades I'd never noticed before. Some bridges burn not by accident, I thought, but by necessity. For the first time in my adult life, I felt the weight of 76,000 unspoken obligations slide off my shoulders. 3 months later, morning light streamed through the wide windows of my Charleston apartment, warming the spines of my design books stacked neatly on reclaimed wood shelves. These same books had been packed in hurried desperation weeks earlier. Now they stood as proof of a life rebuilt. My fingers traced the grain of the antique coffee table I'd bargained for at a local market, its weight grounding me in a space that was finally mine free of invisible debts and the constant tug of obligation. My phone buzzed with a project update, and I adjusted my blazer before leaving for the office. In the hallway mirror, I caught my reflection and noticed something startling in its simplicity. My shoulders no longer curved forward, as if to shield me from invisible burdens. I walked taller, freer, the air around me unchained. At work, Marcus, the senior designer, leaned against my desk one Friday afternoon. "Andy, we need these concept boards finalized for Monday. I know it's your weekend, but..." He hesitated, expectation hovering like an old ghost. 3 months ago, I would have caved instantly, desperate to please. Instead, I smiled gently. "I'm sorry, Marcus, but I already have plans this weekend. I'd be happy to come in early Monday morning and finalize them." His eyebrows rose. "Really, I figured you'd be chasing brownie points. I value my personal time." I said simply the word, no resting comfortably on my tongue. He nodded, a little surprised, but didn't push. I turned back to my work, realizing with quiet awe that I had set a boundary without rehearsal, without guilt. My therapist, Dr. Levine, had been right. The first no is the hardest, she'd said during our first session. Everyone after gets easier. My journal entries bore witness to this shift. The early days in Charleston, filled with panicked scrawls about money, the later pages recording laughter at lunch with coworkers, afternoons spent exploring the city without compulsively checking my phone, evenings where silence no longer felt like danger. That laughter, genuine and surprising, became the soundtrack of my new friendships. My housewarming was small, but full of warmth. Eleanor flew down with a towering fiddle-leaf fig that now thrived beside my living room window. James mailed a care package with a handwritten note that read, "Proud of you doesn't begin to cover it." When Eleanor raised her glass and toasted to new beginnings and the family we choose, I blinked back tears, realizing that blood was not the only bond that mattered. Family was defined by presence, by kindness, by who showed up when the storm hit. When Tara, our junior designer, confessed to me that a client demanded endless revisions without extra pay, I recognized the echo of my own past, being drained, devalued, told I owed more than I could give. I leaned toward her. "Your work has value, and so do you," I said, giving her the words I'd once needed. Watching her straighten, relief flickering in her eyes, felt like closing a circle. The day Destiny's wedding photos arrived in my inbox, I hesitated only a moment before opening them. The event had been stripped of extravagance, downsized to a modest gathering with fewer guests, simpler decor, a plain gown. The smiles looked rehearsed, not radiant. I felt no spike of vindication, only a soft exhale. I clicked away and sent a brief congratulations card. No anger lingered, only distance. The absence of bitterness was perhaps the clearest proof of healing. Weeks later, a letter arrived from my mother. The words carried hints of remorse, thinner than I wished, but thicker than I'd expected. For the first time, she sounded unsure, her certainty about my role in the family's financial survival cracking. I didn't rush to respond. Guilt would once have devoured me. Now I folded the letter, carefully placed it in a drawer, and walked to the waterfront. The Charleston harbor stretched wide and glittering, the sunset painting the water in gold and rose. I whispered the words that had become my mantra. Some bridges burn for a reason. Not every wound heals by going back. Sometimes the truest healing comes from walking away. I don't know yet if forgiveness is always necessary, but I've learned this: protecting your own life your own worth, can be the most powerful gift you give yourself. I turned from the water, the horizon wide open before me, and smiled at the life I was finally choosing on my own terms. If this story moved you, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful true life stories. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to walk away to protect yourself? What gave you the courage?